as we mentioned earlier, the Democrats had a good day, and that has made a lot of people breathe a sigh of relief. But we want to look at those results very much in depth. And here to help us now, joining us once again, is Carolyn Fiddler. We've known and spoken with Carolyn since her days working the political side of the aisle. Now she's working the reporting side of the aisle. Carolyn is now political editor and senior communications advisor for Daily Kos. And whatever you think of Daily Kos, they do great reporting thanks to folks like Carolyn, and we remember her work at the DLCC, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee as well. And here to kind of break down the good news story, she joins us now. So Carolyn, first of all, hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. And secondly, how about them Democrats?
Oh, Tuesday was one of the happiest nights I can remember having in a very long time.
Yeah, it was great. But let's talk a little bit, if you will, about your thoughts on what really happened. If I talk to my friends in the centrist wing of the party, they say it was a great day for socialism. For centrism. If I talk to my socialist friends, they say it was a great day for socialism, and everybody in between thinks it was a great day for them. Which is sort of...
as long as everybody's happy, right?
Well, it's nice that everybody's happy, but it's also kind of good to know what exactly went on. And what are your global thoughts, first of all, before we get into a few individual races?
Well, I think a lot of things happened, a lot of good things, but and a little bit of something to make, I think, everybody happy, at least in some respects. Ralph Northam ran a good progressive campaign. He did not run as a centrist, and he won. But also important, Ed Gillespie ran this terrible, racist, divisive campaign. And he lost, and did not just lose, he lost dramatically, handily. It was a massive loss. Biggest loss for a Republican in Virginia since it's been a while. And just to know that Virginians rejected that kind of rhetoric and that kind of campaign is really, it's a good sign for just America and small d democracy that happened.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I completely agree with you on that aspect of it. That they rejected the Trump style. Trump was, and his people were quick to say, well, Gillespie wasn't our kind of Republican, but he ran a very Trump campaign with the ugly slurs and insinuations about his opponent, that Ralph Northam wants to help pedophiles, and just the worst of the worst, and slurs about immigration and so on. So to see the voters of Virginia, which is a purple state, I guess you'd say, it's basically vomiting up the kind of campaign that represents. It made me very happy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been involved in Virginia politics for a very long time, and even just then living in Virginia as a kid, I had never seen a campaign like this. I mean, I remember when Doug Wilder ran for governor many moons ago. So that would have been 89. Oh gosh. Anyway. I mean, he was the first black governor in the country, and in Virginia as well. And there were certainly some and I was a tyke at the time, but even then I remember my parents discussing some racial overtones and that the campaign was dealing with and involved in, but nothing like what Gillespie did. Virginia just hasn't seen this kind of campaign, maybe ever, definitely not in the last 40 years.
And if he counted on it to bring out the racist vote on what was a miserable rainy day. I landed at Dulles in the middle of it. The traffic was horrible, and I thought, I hope the traffic is terrible because everybody's going out to vote. And maybe in northern Virginia they were, because the turnout was good. That didn't motivate voters, did it? The racial hatred, it turned a lot of people against him, and it didn't really seem to boost any turnout for him that I could tell.
It's true. We're still waiting on certified final precinct level results across the state, and it'll be interesting to dig into those deep red parts of Southwest places like Giles County, it's overwhelmingly white, and went for Trump overwhelmingly last fall, and see what turnout there was like as well, to see if that sort of racial animus actually might have stirred up a little bit in Gillespie's favor. Luckily, those people are not the majority of Virginians by any stretch of the imagination. So we shall see.
So, and I agree with you, by the way, Carolyn Fiddler of Daily Kos. I agree with you that Northam ran a generally progressive campaign. You know, I mean, there were people who pointed to his distancing himself on sanctuary cities, but it was a moot point, first of all, in Virginia. And secondly, he had voted, I believe, in favor of sanctuary cities at one point, and that's apparently why he felt he needed to do that. But overall, I mean, he was very progressive on charter schools and public education, for example, other issues that really mattered to Virginians. So I tend to agree with you that it was overall a progressive campaign. And, you know, he ran, he's a military, former Republican, physician, but he definitely ran a solidly, I would say, liberal Democratic campaign. Any lessons to be inferred? I mean, to me, off-year elections, much less off year like 2017 versus 2018, it all hinges on turnout. Is that a fair statement in this case?
Yes, that was a big part of it. Turnout in 2017 was much higher than it was in 2013, and that definitely helped Northam quite a lot. And Northam did run a progressive campaign. There was that sanctuary cities comment. I can only describe it as a flub. It was very weird in the waning days of the campaign, but he cast a vote preventing the banning of sanctuary cities, and you know, that was the linchpin of Gillespie's racist campaign against him. So that whole thing was very bizarre to me. But it was interesting to me to watch, as someone who lives in Northern Virginia, is very plugged into the Beltway sort of thought bubble, and also just to be in close touch with, you know, former colleagues and friends and political operatives elsewhere in the state, in real Virginia, if you will, and just to feel like this sort of anxiety about all the random things that were happening, like DFA and the Donna Brazile book and all that, all the anxiety in D.C. about that, how everyone was like, oh gosh, this is going to screw Northam, and to talk to folks elsewhere in the state who were just like, what, we don't care about that.
Right.
That doesn't matter. No one outside of Northern Virginia cares at all about that, and most people in Northern Virginia didn't either.
Yeah, which is fascinating to me too, you know, and kind of affirmation that you've got to talk, whether, you know, we've had this controversy on the Democratic side of the aisle for a year now, whether it's Hillary people talking about Russia and what Russia might have done, you know, to fight their candidate, or whether it's Bernie people, and I'm using those terms very broadly, but you know what I mean. I think whether it's Bernie people talking about Donna Brazile, you know, the fact, and her revelations about the DNC, the fact is Virginians are going to vote about Virginia. New Jersey people, and I do want to talk for a minute about New Jersey, voters vote about their lives at the end of the day, don't they?
Yes, indeed. And Virginia, it's long been frustrating to me how folks are like, Virginia's turned blue now. It's definitely a blue state. It is not, especially when it comes to the odd year elections in Virginia, the ones that you know, the national punditry cares a little less about, except for this year they cared about it a lot, because just the electorate in odd years is different than the electorate in even years, and especially in presidential years. And so, which makes Northam's win all the more remarkable. The fact that the off-year electorate turned out for him in such a dramatic way was great. And there's also lots to say about reverse coattails and all the members of the House of Delegates who, the Republicans who got ousted, and the new Democrats will be coming in this January, and that's also a source of real joy for me.
Oh, me too. And by the way, my tweet after the election about Virginia was, what do a transgender heavy metal singer, an ex-Marine turned socialist, and Ralph Northam have in common? They all won in Virginia. You know, and to your point, though, To your point about people being overconfident that Virginia is turning blue, I will say I have a rule of thumb that almost never lets me down, and my rule of thumb is when Democrats get confident, I get nervous. But let's talk about Carolyn Fiddler. Let's talk about New Jersey for a second. As expected, the Democrat there, Phil Murphy, won. Interesting case study, because on the one hand he was Goldman Sachs, and when I hear that, I want to bang my head on the table and say, not this again. On the other hand, he ran probably, at least I think, of all the major candidates running this month, he ran the most progressive campaign. He was for a state bank, which is a very progressive idea. $15 minimum wage across the state of New Jersey, a number of other progressive positions. So this was a Goldman Sachs guy running a lefty campaign, expected to win against Chris Christie's lieutenant, who is tainted with, he's now one of the most, if not the most unpopular governor in the country, and couldn't happen to a nicer guy in my book. But did he exceed? Did he meet? Did Murphy, I'm talking about now, did he meet expectations? Did he beat expectations? Were there any surprises in New Jersey, you think?
I think New Jersey was not a surprise, but it was really nice to see someone who ran that kind of real populist progressive campaign win with such a respectable margin on Tuesday night. So that was great. And Democrats held their majorities in the legislature there, which was also expected. But still, his win gives Democrats another trifecta: control of the governor's mansion and the state assembly and the state senate in New Jersey, and that's a big deal. With that and the state senate special election in Washington State also on Tuesday, Democrats went from 6 trifectas to 8 trifectas in a single night,
which is amazing. And there were some first of all, there were some down ballot races that were interesting. I mean, the one that stuck out that I don't hear anybody talk about, and I only heard it by word of mouth, my dad and stepmom live in Santa Barbara, California, pretty conservative neck of the woods. A Latina affordable housing advocate, I believe, is the new mayor of Santa Barbara.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and Minneapolis, St. Paul rather, next door to Minneapolis. New African American mayor won. It was ranked choice voting, got 50.2% of the vote, so he will become the new mayor of St. Paul. A lot of people, sort of a rainbow coalition, to use that word, of candidates: white, black, male, female, gay, straight, trans, immigrant, you name it. The real melting pot of the kind of Democratic Party of the future we hope to see one across the country, and some ballot initiatives, right? The Medicaid expansion in Maine. What am I missing?
Those are the big ones. You named a lot of them. There was a state senate special election in Georgia, which resulted in 2 Democrats moving on to the runoff election. But that is already a pickup from a Republican,
right, and
will effectively break the Republican supermajority in the state senate there, which is a big deal if we're able to elect a Democratic governor in Georgia next year.
So Carolyn, here's my big takeaway from this election, right or wrong. I think that Democrats have real momentum because of the outrage generated by Donald Trump and the abuses of the Republican Party. I think if the Republicans pass anything like the tax bill they're playing around with, it would be tragedy for the country, but it will be another boost for the Democrats. I feel that, well, what is this alien emotion I feel? I think it's something akin to optimism, but but I'm programmed to worry, and my worry is that I think that we still need an overarching theme for the Democratic Party, and I'm hoping we don't lose sight of that. But I'm curious as to your thoughts about that.
I definitely understand that worry, but I think that Tuesday showed us that we are A, moving in the right direction, and B, all this talk of like Democrats in disarray and like party infighting, like it's not preventing us from winning elections. Enough rank and file activists are focused on the right thing, which is electing more Democrats so we can fight what the Republicans are doing and move more progressive policies forward. Enough of the rank and file movement is focused on doing the right thing and doesn't actually care about these inter-party squabbles, which is fantastic.
I think that's a great point, and we're going to end on that because I know that a lot of left-leaning activist groups, progressive activist groups, were very much for Tom Perriello in the primary against Ralph Northam. But when Ralph Northam won, those groups stepped up by and large and contributed to that.
And Perriello himself.
And Perriello himself, very much so,
advocate for Northam.
And at the end of the day, they did what needed to be done to keep the Republicans at bay. And whoever wins the next set of primaries, may that be a model, I would say, for the rest of the country.
I think that would be a very good thing.
All right. I suspected you might feel that way. Okay, Carolyn Fiddler, political editor and senior communications advisor for Daily Kos. Thanks for your great reporting on this, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to be here on this amazing day and this amazing week.
Yep, it feels great.